Income taxes, the tyranny through which those who claim to represent my interests get to represent their own interests by usurping my resources in the interest of those whom they seek to usurp power from. A laundering spin cycle of cash and influence with the noxious side effect of leaving me even broker than the system.
Every time who I am, well, how damn, I'm a man. 6 shooters in both my hands. I'm a cold-blooded brother, a real bad mother. Watch out, honey, here I am.
So Donald Trump is looking to institute another major tax cut if he is reelected, which is another reason why we need to make sure that he is reelected. So he's looking for a second major tax cut on top of the original tax cut in 2017 that, of course, the media said that it was all just giving tax cuts to the rich. I'm no rich man, and I saw more money in my pocket, and that's all I care about when it comes to the tax cuts. I don't really care who it helps more than me or anything else. That doesn't really matter. Now, there was this kind of thing in the 1980s. Conservatism kind of got knocked off track because it became all about the money. Conservatism kind of became this idea that whatever allows you to make the most money is the conservative right-wing track. And that really threw out a lot of ideas that were central to conservatism up until that point. And so I'm not one of those conservatives who thinks that conservatism is all about the money, because it's not. But that doesn't change the fact that all freedom does begin and end with economic freedom. The freedom to cull your own resources allows you to pursue the purpose of your own spirit. When your labor and resources are extracted from you, you lose that ability in you lose the ability to a purposeful life, and you become enslaved to providing for your overlords in government. And you hear a lot of similar rhetoric kind of from the left, but the angle of their ire is completely different. They oppose those who create the opportunities, the job creators, the bosses, the business owners, all of that. But those people aren't guilty of being your overlords or anything like that, because we all have voluntary ability to decide where we want to work and for how much money. We all set the cost of our own labor and agree to it accordingly to somebody who is willing to pay for it. But when you're talking about the government, they deprive you of the choice and they take whatever they decide is theirs. Which I still personally think that the income tax is absolutely unconstitutional, despite the fact that they somehow did pass a constitutional amendment allowing it. But when you think about it, your income tax essentially makes you an unpaid, coerced laborer to the federal government for, I guess in my, in middle class tax bracket right now, it's 22%. So 22% of the time, that's essentially an entire day out of your work week if you work a 5-day work week, that is being extracted from you without your will. You're working for the government for 1 day a week, essentially. Yeah, a little bit more than 1 day a week. And to me, that does seem like a soft form of slavery. Of course, that argument has not held up in courts, but fundamentally, I still find it to be true. So let's get into the article here. President Trump said Monday that he would push for another significant tax cut if he is reelected, while bashing Democrats as tax hikers, which they absolutely are. The Democrats, they're still sort of, the whole Marxist idea of class warfare essentially shifted to cultural Marxism with Antonio Gramsci in terms of how they decided to go after the West, because the West was not nearly as susceptible to what Gramsci called a war of movement, or a violent overthrow of the political power structure. So instead needed to be subverted through cultural means, and that's where we get a lot of our critical race theory and everything. But they haven't entirely abandoned the class struggle, the class war issue that was the original inspiration for the Bolshevik Revolution and kind of the first real communist revolution. And so we still get a good bit of that from Democrats, and we hear that a lot in their rhetoric about paying their fair share, and you give a tax cut, well, it's going to help the middle class, but just because of how percentages work, of course it's going to give a higher dollar amount tax cut to the higher class, because that's just how percentages work. But that doesn't mean that, you know, the person who is making $60,000 a year that all of a sudden is being able to keep an extra $350 a month. That's not to say that it doesn't help them. In fact, it probably does help them more. It's just, you know, it's because they get to catch up on their bills. They get to maybe pay off some debt. They get to take care of certain things, maybe if they were living paycheck to paycheck, that they wouldn't have been able to take care of before. Where people in the upper class, I mean, sure, yeah, they get more dollar amounts, but they already had that cushion, whatever. Who cares? Who cares what somebody else makes? At the end of the day, to worry about how much somebody else is saving off of their percentage of the tax cuts, and then to disavow it and not keep that keep whatever you get to save for yourself, is essentially to cut off your nose to spite your face. Not to mention it's feeding into the deadly sin of envy, which is never good. Never good. Never covet what your neighbor has. Never worry about that. Just worry about yourself. Worry what it gets you. So we're going to get into a little bit here what the tax cut is. So Donald Trump tweeted, "Biggest tax cut ever and another one coming. Vote," Trump tweeted early Monday morning. So he said that he wants to lower the income tax percent from 15 to 22%, create a tax-free savings account for the middle class, and revive the payroll tax cut idea. The goal is to help get folks who make less than $100,000 is to help folks who make less than $100,000 a year, said Moore, who is also a contributor to the Washington Examiner. And I think that's fantastic. You know, I did the math on what would the extra money that would come into my pocket every month, and it was somewhere between $300 and $400, not really knowing what the payroll tax would involve. And for me, that would be huge. That would be huge. I make a very middle-class income, but of course, living in California, that means I live in poverty. not poverty, but, you know, it's certainly not, I can't go buy a house or anything, no matter how small of a house, because it's California. And even like a low-income house is like $1 million here in California. But to be able to get an extra $300 to $400 in my pocket every month, holy shit, that would be massive for me. And I don't care if it means that somebody who makes a lot more than me it gives them an extra $4,000 a month. I don't care. That's their business. I'm not worried about that. I'm just worried about what's going to help me and help me move forward in my life. And for me, a tax cut and the ability to use my resources, use the fruits of my labor the way that I see fit, is a way, way better option. So Moore said that there's a high likelihood Trump will announce a specific tax cut plan in the next couple of weeks before the election. And that could very well be a huge boost, because, I mean, you just go back to what was it? Was it the Reagan era or Bush Sr. era, where, you know, they said it's the economy, stupid. Yeah, people care about what they have in their pockets. At the end of the day, money talks and bullshit walks. Nobody cares. You know, as long as they're making more money, as long as they're feeling more prosperous, as long as they have more freedom to do what they want to do with their lives, at the end of the day, that is a big push towards being able to fulfill your purpose, because it can also buy you time to pursue certain hobbies that you find more fulfilling spiritually and you know, just through whatever your sense of self is. So, you know, like I said, I'm not one of those people that thinks that, you know, it's everything about conservatism, it comes down to the money. No, it doesn't, because there are so many other peripheral issues that are just as important. But it is still a very important issue, because this country was never designed to be a country where the government gets to keep up to half of your money. That was never in the plan. Yet it was in, of course, through Woodrow Wilson's presidency. And, you know, I'm not going to get started on a whole rant on Woodrow Wilson, because he was one of the worst presidents ever. But, of course, in the same damn year, they passed both the income tax and the Federal Reserve. And ever since then, we have been getting butt-fucked. So, sorry for the language, but, you know, that's essentially true. And, you know, for people who are, like, kind of living on that edge where they're getting all their bills paid, but they're not really able to save up too much money, a tax cut like this could be the difference between them burning so much of their money that they'll never see again on rent, and being able to save up for a down payment on a house that now becomes an asset of value and wealth. It is what creates the middle class, home ownership. And so being able to keep that extra few $100 a month could be the difference between being able to build a nest egg for yourself and something that gives you comfort for the rest of your life versus every month just having to worry about scrounging up enough money that you're just going to be burning and torching and never seeing again. So it really is a huge, huge difference. So let's see. Some economists are skeptical that a tax cut would help the recovery from the panic. So a tax cut would have limited benefits to those that need the most help, said Kyle Pomerleau, a specialist in federal tax policy at the American Enterprise Institute, a conservative think tank. While, yes, I understand the argument that you have people that have been out of work, that, you know, they need the unemployment, they need that things they probably need it the most, that doesn't mean that the people that are in the middle class that are, you know, still working their jobs at schools or working as police officers or firefighters. You know, I guess, I don't know, a lot of firefighters are volunteer. I don't know. But you get the kind of income range that I'm talking about. People that still have been working through the pandemic. Those people would still be greatly, greatly assisted by being able to keep more of what is theirs. You know, at the end of the day, the other things that we're talking about here, so things like stimulus checks and unemployment aid would have more benefit to those struggling right now. A tax cut would be positive, could be positive in the long run, but it's not the best course of action right now. That kind of depends who you're talking about. But at the end of the day, a tax cut is more about you being able to keep more of what is yours. Where things like stimulus checks and unemployment, those are going to raise the taxes in order to pay for them later. So it's kind of, yeah, I get it. I mean, there are people that are struggling right now, and there are people that have been out of work. It's really a rock and a hard place type situation because you absolutely feel for those people. But I still also think that the people being able to keep more of their money versus people redistributing money to people that are out of work, there's sort of a spiritual, ethical argument in there that kind of leads me to think that tax cuts are the better way to go. Especially since tax cuts would likely lead to more job creation and take some of those people off unemployment. They wouldn't need the benefits as much, the stimulus checks and all that. Stimulus checks, you write the check, you send it to the person, and within, a few weeks, that money's burnt, never seen again. So I'm no economist, but that's just, from my on-the-ground vantage point, that's how I see it. So there was another economist who says that lowering the 22% income tax bracket to 15% would not be targeted to aid middle and lower class people. Many families who earn more than $100,000 a year would benefit the most from such a tax cut, York said, because most tax relief helps those at the higher income bracket more than those at the lower levels due to progressive tax structure. Sure, but he's also talking about doing this for a single bracket. So lowering it from 22 to 30 to 15%. Well, if you're making, $1 million a year, you're not in that 22% tax bracket. This person here is also gaslighting because they are also talking about how, well, it helps this person more, so let's not worry about helping this person, however the percentage matches up to them. This person still needs that help, and you're helping them based on what their ability to produce. Another thing that I think really needs to go away is withholding. And I get the concerns. Of course, you don't withhold, and, well, are people going to actually save enough money to pay their taxes? Well, if they're not able to do so, well, then maybe you got an issue with your tax system. But income withholding has been a very clever trick because you don't feel that sense of loss that something, when they withhold the money from your check, as opposed to you having to fill out, write all those zeros at the end of the year and then go and drop that check off in the mailbox. You feel that sense of loss. When you have withholding, you never actually tangibly had that money, so you don't feel that same sense of loss, and you're not as concerned about the taxes that you're paying, despite the fact that you should be, because you're still being equally negatively affected, financially speaking. So the monetary loss doesn't change. So there's something about that withholding that it is, again, subversive. Because everything that the left does, which, of course, the income tax is a leftist proposition. It is a redistributive proposition. And so everything about the left, they always have to rely on subversion in order to make their ideas palatable to people. That should be the biggest red flag, and we should be able to see through the game. But again, you're asking for foresight among a culture that is inundated with things like Beyonce and Cardi B. So, although even Cardi B, a couple years ago, she was talking about how, you know, she had to write her tax check, and you know, her jaw dropped, and she was complaining about how much she had to pay in taxes. And then, of course, she goes and endorses Bernie Sanders because, you know, she's Cardi B and she's a fucking idiot. But whatever. So, besides touting his own tax cut plans, Trump also took aim at Democrats on Monday, claiming that they would increase taxes and cause major economic downturn if they won the election in November, and they absolutely would. Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden pledged in May that he would only raise taxes on high-income earners and that there would be no tax hikes for people making less than $400,000. Biden also committed to reversing Trump's tax cuts. In other words, he is going to raise the taxes for fucking everybody. He's a liar. He is a goddamn liar. So you can't out of one side of your mouth say that you're not going to have any tax hikes for people making less than $400,000 a year, and then on the other side of your mouth say that you're going to reverse tax cuts and raise the taxes on everybody. You know, Biden is an establishment crony, Democrat, corrupt, just sleazeball politician. That's what he is. And he doesn't get a pass because he's only half of that now because he lost half of his marbles, you know, after he left the vice presidency. Which, you know, so some of these appearances by Joe Biden, he's still saying some dumb things, but he's also seeming more with it than I thought too, which is a little head-scratching. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I believe in this theory, but it just kind of makes you wonder whether some of that might be for show, because he thinks he might be indicted with the whole Obamagate thing, and he wants to be unfit to stand trial, and he'll have a whole host of highlight reel moments from his 2020 ill-founded campaign to prove that he was losing his mind. I don't know. That's just a stupid theory. You know, I'm not saying that there's any truth to that or anything like that, but, you know, where would we be if we never thought about possibilities, right? Where would we be as humanity if we never thought about possibilities and took interest into theoretical things that, you know, maybe they'll be proven true, but if you never think of them, you never pursue them, you never find out. That's just how it goes. So anyways, guys, that's the video. If you haven't already, hit that like button, turn that thumbs up blue, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, hit that notification bell because we all know it's voices like mine that are first to be taken out back and old yellered by the folks at Big Tech. Speaking of Big Tech, if you want to follow me on any of their bullshit platforms, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Parler at Ram Thorburn. Also, if you're into some of the alt-tech sites, I'm on Pill.net and Minds, also at Ram Thorburn. And if you'd like to help contribute to the channel, there are links to my Subscribestar, Patreon, and PayPal down in the description below. Anyways, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.